All right, welcome to another episode of Armchair CMOs. It's your boy V Moss.
Welcome back, and I'm Jules.
All right,
Happy episode 13, Vaughn. Isn't
lucky
that
13.
crazy? 13, isn't that crazy?
Yes.
We've been doing this for 13 weeks.
More, yeah, more than 13 weeks. I mean, we haven't done every week. We skipped, we probably skipped only like 1 week, maybe.
I don't think oh, maybe one. Yeah. We've been
Well,
talking about it for even longer, so.
this is a big week though. So let's get right into it. Um, Jules, kick us off with some brand marketing in the fashion is not the right word. What is this? What is this industry?
Beauty
Beauty. Yes, that's what I'm looking for. Beauty category.
in the beauty world. Yeah, so beauty brands are more and more getting into women's sports. Um, it's a trend that started with Sephora sponsoring, signing on to sponsor, not maybe not started, but like the first that I saw was Sephora sign on to sponsor the Toronto Tempo, the new WNBA team, and Unrivaled, which obviously just became a big deal like last week. And the Unrivaled partnership, it seems like is a little bit bigger. It's not just like the same level of sponsorship as anything you might see in an arena on game day. From what I read, it sounds like they're providing like products in kind. They outfitted the league's glam room. The branding is on the court. So Sephora is clearly going all in on this. And then this last week, it was announced that there will be a new professional women's lacrosse league, and that it'll be sponsored by Maybelline. Um, so clearly, a lot of movement to try to get into women's sports from these brands who cater primarily to women, which I think is so smart. I mean, we've obviously seen a ton of investment in women's sports from like all the kind of big players in this in like the sports marketing space. Um, but I don't think Sephora or Maybelline have sponsored any other sports teams or leagues or games or anything like that. So this is the first time we're seeing like beauty specifically in the space. Um, and then separate from this, I wanted to talk about like why this is so smart because there's actually data that supports that investing in women's female athletes, basically, in women's sports is a really strong investment. And that's because there's data that shows um, women are like female athletes are more trusted than men. So there's like this statistic that says 57% of consumers across the countries surveyed, which included, I think, like the EU, US, Australia, Canada, maybe, um, believe that like the women promoting the products, or they, let me start over. They trust the women like promoting those products more than they do their male counterparts. There we go. I don't know why that was such a mouthful for me. Um, so it's like a 7 percentage point difference. So like if 57% of consumers say they trust the female athletes more, and then the men is statistic is like 50% say they trust them. Um, so anyway, just data behind why like these teams getting into this space or these companies getting into this space where they haven't been before is so smart.
Yeah, I mean,
I really don't know why like that was so hard for me to get out of my brain, but there it
it's
is.
back to what we talk about, like the concept of endemic and non-endemic brands, right? Like it's not through the history of, you know, the big men's leagues, non-endemic brands have been participating in sponsorships and partnerships forever. So like it makes sense. And I think it makes even more sense because a lot of those brands, like some of them are male specific, like when you talk about, Gillette shaving and like, Barkley and Jordan had the deodorant commercials back in the day, which are like, yeah, some of those were kind of male specific, but like I think it makes even more sense because these products like makeup and beauty products like are women specific. So like being able to connect that dot, right? Like with a brand, like with a non-endemic brand, like really understanding how valuable the women's sports landscape is and these athletes are, I think is very smart, like you said.
Yeah, I'm expecting to see more of it. Um, so that'll be an interesting thing to keep an eye on. Um,
Do you think that part of the strategy is, I mean, typically the stereotype would be that these women athletes are not super into this as much as like non-athletes. Maybe they're trying to tap into that, or maybe they're trying to capitalize with somebody like Angel Reese, who's got that kind of beauty is important to me on top of playing basketball type. I think that there's some conversation there about what's the motive or like what's the strategy behind it in terms of like obviously like the value is there because it's great high level basketball and the attention is there, but maybe there's another marketing idea there. What do you think?
like they're trying to tap into a new audience
Yeah.
of, I don't know. I don't know because I think that there's like way more overlap between female athletes and like women who watch sports and women who care about beauty stuff than you think. I
I would
think
have no
like
idea. That's why I'm
that you,
asking you. Because that's
yeah, I don't know. I
I
think
don't
that's
know
like
anything
more of a,
about beauty.
yeah, no, I think that's more of a stereotype than like it actually is true. But I don't know. I don't have the numbers behind it. I don't. Mm, I don't know. I mean, that's a very good question because I just saw a statistic that says more men actually watch women's sports than women, which is likely because it is true, actually true, that in general, men are more interested in sports than women. Like if you look at the audiences, you know. Um, but I guess if you're trying to reach a female sports fan,
Hmm.
women's sports is a good place to do it.
Right.
Um, Also because like you want women selling products that women usually use.
Exactly.
That like that's what I think it is more so
Yeah.
than what you were saying of like I don't know, these women are not normally into it, or even like female sports fans are normally not into it or whatever. Like I think it's just more that like you wouldn't have LeBron James promoting like a lip gloss because he doesn't wear lip gloss. Um, Not that he can't, but you get my point. So I don't know. That's very interesting. I'm interested to see if more brands start doing this, like what angle they do take. Because like Dove, I think many moons ago, did I think did something more along the lines of like what you were saying. Like I think it was Dove did
Yeah.
something with like female athletes specifically and like needing to like take care of themselves or whatever.
Yeah, I think I remember that. But I think they also did it with the men too. It was kind of a similar, I don't know. We're
Yeah.
kind of I don't want us to talk about something that we don't know we're talking about. But I think
Yeah. No, but it's a good you bring up a good point of like what is their strategy behind this? Like what are they hoping to tap into? Like what will success look like to them? And that we can only like conjecture about, but
think we agree, and I think that we agree with them. We agree with each other, and we agree with them that like the high level, it's like just again tapping in with you know dope and talented women to help promote women's products is a no-brainer.
yeah, agreed. All right. Shifting gears.
Sticking
You
with
want to talk
basketball.
about
Sticking with basketball.
NBA?
All right. So NBA had their games in France and Paris last week. This is, I think, I read that it is, let me find the quote. Paris games in 2025 is the NBA's 96th and 97th games in Europe. It's the 14th and 15th games in France. That includes preseason and regular season. And so this is going to be the fourth and fifth regular season games they've had in France since 2020. They had two games, both featuring the Pacers and the Spurs. Obviously, that's a big deal because Victor Wembanyama, superstar, phenom from playing for the Spurs, is from Paris, from France. So to have a chance for him to go home is obviously a big deal and play in front of his home crowd. in his home country. Obviously, like a lot of that is still riding the wave of the Paris Olympics and having the US battle France in the championship game, which was a big deal. So overall, a great activation, a great partnership between the NBA and having, you know, them play games in Europe is obviously part of them trying to continue to grow the game, but also for them to strategically take advantage of the superstardom of Wemby. But also wanted to talk about smart synergy here. They did it during Paris Fashion Week, so tons of celebrities already in Paris. Obviously, I have to mention my guy Pharrell, who is the head of men's fashion at Louis Vuitton, who had a show I think the night before the first game. So both teams are already there. I think a bunch of them went to the show. Wemby sat courtside at the show, and Chris Paul went to the show with his wife. So just being able to have that activation, that collaboration, like this is something that's happening here, but we're also gonna have these games here at the same time, and then just make sure that we show up in that space that's already happening here in Paris for Paris Fashion Week. Um, and it was dope to see celebrities from the US, like Asia Wilson was there, some other celebs from America that we would recognize, but there are also a bunch of European and French celebs that were there too to just show that it's not just about us going there, it's about us as the NBA being here and embracing and being an active participant in the culture here. But from a basketball standpoint, the team split the games. The games are both blowouts, so like I don't know how much it did for like actual like showing the game in a positive light, other than the fact that people are hyped to see Wemby. But another thing that was reported this week, just to wrap it all up, is last year, apparently that it was reported this week that last year at the games, executives from the NBA had a meeting with the folks at Euroleague to talk about a potential European basketball league. So we've talked about it on the show before, especially with the NFL and the whole Netflix thing about how, the global growth of these leagues is kind of like the next frontier, especially when we talk about the NFL has been going to Europe for almost a decade, maybe exactly a decade, which is crazy. Maybe even longer. And then, even college football had a game in Ireland this year, maybe.
Oh, yeah, that sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that's just like we talked about on this show specifically from the standpoint of with Netflix helping to bridge that gap and make that connection with the Christmas games and Netflix being an international platform. But it shows that these leagues are serious about it. They're trying to figure out ways to keep things to be creative about how to keep revenue being generated as much as possible, and continue to grow the fan base when there's rumors or thoughts about, especially from the NBA, talking about potential fandom being down or not as strong as it used to be. So figuring out ways to keep people engaged and trying to grow the audience is definitely a focal point of these leagues, especially NBA.
I would be so interested to see like how they do if it's NBA run league in Europe, like how they run it. I've been seeing a lot of comparisons between like European leagues and the NBA lately, and like the difference in the cultures and the way they're run and like what the emphasis is on. Um, and I feel like there's a lot about about the American NBA that Europeans would not like, that they would not go for, just given like the culture of the leagues there.
Yeah.
So they're either gonna have to do some like really smart, like really in-depth audience research, audience listening, to set it up well, or like, I don't know. It'll be so interesting to see.
Yeah.
Um,
And the fan culture of European basketball is almost like European is closer to soccer than it is than to the NBA fan culture, right? Like,
yeah,
so I think that intensity is like maybe what is missing, maybe, right? Like the idea
from
from the
the
NBA.
US.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the idea of like, it didn't click in my brain until I'll admit it didn't click in my brain. Like I understood it conceptually before, but then once I really got in depth watching Ted Lasso and I really understood how crazy the concept of relegation is. Like that's serious. Like that is like that makes the stakes high. And just the pride that the people in those communities have, like I think we don't have that as much, right? Like, and there's a lot of reasons for it, right? Like I saw something last week where people were talking about part of the reason why people don't go to games or people aren't excited or don't have the fan affinity as it used to because they can't go to games anymore because it costs too much to go to games. So it's not like
Yeah.
you're in LA or if you're in, if you're in LA is a bad example because if you're in LA, you love the Lakers, like that's just like that's a cultural thing. But like if you're in somewhere like
DC.
see where we're like we love DC, but like the people that are going to DC games are like people like us who are yuppie out of towners who are not from who are not from there, who are not like born and bred DC people who will have that pride. So
Also, even us yuppie out of towners like can't afford to go. Like I mean, so I'm in a new place. Surprise. I change homes every 2 months, but um so back in DC, but I was thinking about being in Pittsburgh. And when I was in Pittsburgh, I was like 100% I'm getting season tickets to Pitt basketball just because why not? Like it doesn't like they're affordable and I'll go to a bunch of games, whatever. And then I thought about the same thing in DC and I was like, well, definitely not season tickets because they play so much. I'm not going to go to every game, but like maybe there's like a partial plan package or whatever. But to even go to like 5 games is like so absurdly expensive that it's just like isn't worth it. And that's me like trying to be a Wizards fan. Um, so that I do think is like a huge difference in the US and European leagues that is impacting them.
yeah.
Like not even like culturally, but just logistically.
All right.
Um,
So
all
we're
right.
to
We want to move on.
the biggest topic of the week, obviously. We're going to talk a little NFL, and that deep sigh is because the first topic for the NFL is about being tired. Are we tired of the Kansas City Chiefs being in the Super Bowl? And from a fan,
Not just us.
yes, as a fan of the game, but as a marketing professional, is it helpful for the league? Jules, what do you think?
So my gut, no. As a fan, I say no. It's not helpful. It's bad. I don't care anymore. I'm annoyed. I have no interest in watching the Super Bowl. As a marketing professional, I'm always going to look at the data. Are you laughing at me for not being able to talk today?
Oh, I'm just go ahead.
As a marketing professional, I'm always going to look at the data. And so I looked up some numbers to see if I've seen it a lot. People are like, I'm not even gonna watch Super Bowl this year. Like, I don't want to watch the Chiefs win again. Like, whatever. So I looked up some numbers to see if I could prove that to be true. And it doesn't look like it. I say that because we've seen this before. This is not the first time that a team has gone to the Super Bowl 3 years in a row. This is not the first like NFL dynasty that's existed. Everyone remembers Tom Brady's Patriots, and I hated them probably even more than I hate the Chiefs. Um, but I looked it up. I have numbers. They went to the Super Bowl in 2012, 2015, and then 2017, 18, and 19. And they didn't win 3 years in a row like the Chiefs have the opportunity to do this year, but they did win in 15, 17, and 19. So they won 3 out of 5 years and they went 5 out of 8 years. Um, so you would expect there, if there is such a thing as like fatigue and for viewership numbers to be down, you would expect to see it with the Patriots in the tens, in the teens, the 20 teens. Um, so here's the data. The most watched Super Bowl ever was Patriots Falcons in 2017. We still haven't beaten that. Um, Last year's Chiefs 49ers was the second most watched Super Bowl ever. And that is a difference of like 200,000 when we're talking numbers like of 123 million viewers. So those were like very, very close. And then the third most watched is about 6 million behind those two was Eagles Patriots in 2018. So two of the three most viewed uh Super Bowls were the Patriots during that dynasty, and the second most viewed ever was the Chiefs in their third appearance. Um, so I don't think the data points to like these dynasties being
But
bad for the league.
that data just says that we're watching the game. That doesn't mean that we're like,
Excited about it.
yeah. I mean, I will. So my answer to the question is yes, I'm fatigued but I'm still interested because I'm like a like I don't know how to describe. Like my NFL fandom is very unique, and I'm just going another rant. This is my rant for this episode. So I'm from Richmond, Virginia. Closest team to me when I was growing up is the Washington team, who was not good when I was a kid. Like I was born before they won the Super Bowls, and after I became old enough to pay attention to football, they weren't good anymore. So like no one watched them. So as a kid, like my mom rooted for them, and I rooted for the Cowboys as a kid, in spite. But something about the Cowboys as I grew up, I was just like, this team, like, no, like I can't do this. And I give my mom credit because the Washington team was not good. She just always used to root for the underdog that was coming in the league. So in the Jaguars' second year in the league, they went all the way to the conference championship. And so the Jaguars had a bunch of players from HBCUs on their team. So my mom was like, "Oh, they got a bunch of HBCU players on their team. Let's root for them in this playoff run." And I just stuck with them. So I've been a Jaguars fan in my like formative years since I was 12 years old. So like that's all that matters. Anything before that doesn't count. The problem with that is the Jaguars haven't consistently been good enough for me to have like diehard allegiance to the Jaguars. I've also lived in a bunch of places and I've never lived in Florida. But I've lived in places that have had teams, including the Washington team. But most recently, I've lived in Philly, and I lived in Philly the year that this team went to play the Chiefs in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. So I say all that to say that's the only reason why I care about this because I'm rooting for the Eagles to win because I want that. I like that team, and I like the city, and I'm rooting for the city. But I like the team. I have a lot of friends that are from Philly. But also, I want them to win because one, I feel like they should have won the first game. That's a whole other conversation. But like to this point, like the Chiefs' fatigue is very similar to what you talked about with the Patriots. Like Patriots' fatigue is it's the same to me. Like I think the only difference is Patrick Mahomes, I think, is more a little bit more. I think he's a little bit more likable because he was like expected to be good, right? Like I felt like Tom Brady came out of nowhere when he first came in the league, and then he just happened to get this job because Drew Bledsoe got hurt, and then it was like okay,
No, Americans love a Cinderella story.
but I wouldn't call Tom a Cinderella story though. I don't know. I don't. I don't know.
I actually think I think that Tom Brady is more hateable. Tom Brady elicits stronger feelings because like of his personality, but also like to some degree he was almost like so perfect.
Yeah, that's my point. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying
But
that
I
Patrick
think
Mahomes is like more
but
like
you either loved him or hated it. Patrick Mahomes has flaws,
he does.
namely his family.
Yes.
Um,
I saw a cool
and
video
so
that
it's
was like
almost like
out. Like,
you just don't like him, but you're not like, ah, I hate that guy. Like he's run the league for 7 years. Like you're just like, I want him to go away. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. What I was gonna say is I think there's an important distinction between fatigue and like dislike, like disapproval. Because fatigue to me would lead to like less engagement, lower viewership, whatever. Where people will hate watch like crazy.
100%.
And hate watching is probably good for the league.
Yeah,
Like it keeps them a part of conversation, like gets viewership, like it means people care. Like you have to care about something to hate something about it. Fatigue is like just a lack of passion for it. I think that's the question. I feel like towards Patrick Mahomes specifically, probably fatigue. And Travis Kelce, I just don't want to hear about them anymore. I don't care. The Chiefs as a whole, I think it's like I hate watching. Like I just want to see them lose so badly.
Yeah. But you want to see them lose badly because you're tired of hearing about Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. Like,
That's true. But
yeah.
I do think there's a distinction between like fatigue and disapproval or
I
whatever.
think like when I think about it, like even comparing it to Brady and to like LeBron, right? Like I don't think that we ever got tired of Brady or LeBron because of off of the field stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it was only ever about the playing.
It was just the fact that we were just tired of like I mean I'm a LeBron fan, so I never got tired of that. But like
No, same,
I
but
was tired of Steph beating LeBron, right? Like I think,
yeah.
and I think that that's like die and be a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain, right? Like I think when Patrick first came on, it was like okay, cool, like they won the first one and they lost it to Brady, and it was like okay, well maybe they won't come back, but that was in 2021, right? Like, and they've been back so many times now, like so. It's just their turn to be the guys that got to get taken out. So we'll see. I mean, I think it'll beat these numbers you just went over before. I think it'll be the most watched Super Bowl, period. Like,
Okay, so this
where
go
can I
ahead.
bet on that? I need to win some money. Can I bet on that? Is that like
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sure. I'm
there's
sure like DraftKings or someone has a line for viewership totals. Um, okay, but what you're gonna say is I also think the viewership is heavily affected by who performs at halftime,
yes,
which like maybe I'm overstating that, but I don't know that I am. Which like leads us to our next topic of Kendrick, and it was announced this week that SZA will also be performing. And I was gonna ask you, like, do you think that that's a big enough draw for
100%.
that to have an impact on viewership?
That's 100% part of the reasons why I think it's going to be the best ever. So one, Patrick Mahomes, whatever, like whatever we just talked about with people being fatigued, either they hate fatigue, they're going to watch it anyway because they want to see him lose. Two, Eagles fans are like rabid. Eagles fans are everywhere. Um, but on top of that, Saquon is having such a remarkable season that casual football fans will want to see, are going to turn in to see him. Like Patrick Mahomes does what he does, and like he's been amazing and he's done great stuff. But like, and you know that, you don't want to give him a shot in the fourth quarter to win the game. But like, you're not tuning in for that. You're tuning in like if you turned on the game, the Commanders and Eagles game, and you missed their first play on offense, like you missed arguably the biggest play of the whole game. He scored on the first offensive play. Like that's what people are going to turn in that are football fans because they know how big of a deal, like how talented he is, and he's just killing it. But then also like to the halftime point, like the Kendrick at halftime thing is a big deal because the world, mostly our country, but the world in general, spent the whole summer paying attention to a rap beef that he was in with the biggest musician, arguably top five musicians that are active right in the world right now, right? And people say that he won that battle. And then now he's performing at halftime. That's a big deal. So everyone's tuning in to like all the drama around that is going to capture a casual football fan, like just like Usher did. Like there's a bunch of people just turning in to watch Usher or Beyonce. Like we know that this is a big deal, and people are going to turn in just to watch that. So like the no, like just like Usher inflated the number a little bit at halftime last year, I think Kendrick's going to do the same thing, and that's why I think it's going to be the biggest ever.
This is so interesting. I disagree. And I know this isn't necessarily what we're talking about, but like what we meant to talk about. But okay, I have Kendrick fatigue, talking about fatigue. I lost respect for him as a man as a result of the rap beef. I know that it's like a culture of rap, but like I don't that's not what I want out of being a rap fan. And I am a rap fan, like not like you are, but like I listen to a lot of rap. I stay up with the news. I listen to the new stuff that comes out. Like I would call myself a rap fan, 100%. I did not care for the rat beef. I didn't care about it. I like lost a lot of respect that he started it and continued it and that it's like even still a thing. To your point though, I do think that will bring people in because I think people will be interested to see if it like kicks off any more drama with Drake or like if I don't know if anyone says anything new or whatever. Um, but I also like I don't know, maybe I'm wrong on this part, but because like to be fair, Kendrick took like an 8 year break of releasing albums or however long it was. Um, I don't like think of him as a super amazing performer. Like when you list the people who are like known for putting on like really great shows, like Usher, Beyonce, Taylor Swift are among them. And so like artists like that, when they perform at halftime, people tune in at halftime because like it's gonna be the performance of a lifetime because they're good performers, even just like on their normal tour. Or like I don't necessarily think of that when I think of Kendrick.
Jules,
Am I wrong?
we're gonna have to agree to disagree here.
Okay.
We're not on the same page, and this discussion is not this podcast.
Not the point.
For this discussion, but I will say you should go if you have. I don't know if you're still supporting Amazon, but there's a performance that he did in France for his for the tour that was before. I don't know the details, but it was like the highest grossing tour. I don't know if it was before Drake. Anyway, it's a performance in France of him doing songs from that album and like his whole like you should go watch it.
What album?
It's from the Mr. Morale Big Steppers tour.
Okay.
But I think that
I mean, I for sure could be wrong. I don't know as much about that topic as you do. So,
all I will say is like you're not wrong though. I think there are people who are like you who are not gonna watch it because of him, but you're still gonna watch it, right? I
yeah.
think my point is like and it's and I understand like I think that is a unique thing that point that you make about Usher and Justin and Beyonce because those type of acts, like you're gonna get a show because they're gonna sing and they're gonna dance, but you're not gonna get that with Kendrick. But at the same time,
You have
like
to get like the theatrics.
yeah,
Yeah.
but the theatrics that he brung in that show will I think they will change your mind
Okay.
a little bit. It's not
All
gonna
right.
be Beyonce, it's not, but it's gonna be like I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't want to stay on this topic too long. The other thing I was going to say that this Super Bowl does have going for it is going to get the girlies because we still have the Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce effect. Not probably as strong as last year, but we're going to have that. Also, Jalen Hurts is probably the hottest player in the NFL, so there will be girlies tuning in for that too. So if we're talking about bringing the different demographics, you will get the girlies. That's all I have to say. That's all I was going to add.
One last thing to wrap up this halftime conversation. So last week we had a bit, not a big discussion, but we had a major point to talk about LiAngelo Ball performing at the Giants at the Lions and Commanders playoff game and how bad we thought that was for a bunch of reasons. But wanted to talk about the fact that rapper named Armani White performed at halftime of the Eagles and Commanders game yesterday. I personally want to bring that up just to brag because I actually had Armani come to a Temple game. He's from Philly, which is important to know. That's the most important part. He's from Philly, so it made sense to have him perform at halftime. But I had him come to a Temple basketball game a couple years ago, which was dope. So I got to meet him. Good dude. Shout out to him. Congrats on performing at halftime. But the point of that was it's very different than what the Jello thing was. He is a little bit more advanced in his career, but not a lot. Like he's still a very new artist. But it worked because he was at home in Philly. He had the dancers performing on the field with him, so he wasn't just standing out there by himself. I saw a clip that I didn't see the whole performance, but the clip that I saw looked good. It looked entertaining, but just wanted to say that was better executed than what happened at the Lions the week before. That's all I'll say.
Totally unrelated, but you just reminded me of this. I'm pretty sure I've Instagram DM'd with Armani White.
About what?
I think I, re oh, we did, and we talked about you.
What?
This is all coming back to me. Okay, he like right after Billie Eilish came out, that song, like his one song, and he was like that blew up, like he was still pretty like unknown. He posted something on his story and he's like, "Who's in the DMV?" And I don't know what possessed me to respond to this story. But I think I just responded like a hand raise or something. And not expecting him to like pay attention or care, you know what I mean? I thought just maybe he was like from the DMV, and I was like, oh, fun, cool, like whatever. I don't know. Anyway, he answers and he goes, I have a show at blah 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 or something. I was like, cool, I'm not going. but, but then somehow you came up and we for sure talked about you.
That's funny.
This all just came back to me while you were talking. I have not thought about that since that moment, but
That's funny.
he remembers you. He knows who you are.
Yeah,
So
I meant to text him, but I forgot. I didn't want to bother him. But
you can do it. You can do it now.
maybe I'll send him this clip. I'll have him talk.
No.
Hey, you remember when this random girl named Ju Anyway, let's keep it going. So, last two things about the NFL before we wrap up. So, I just want to go on a not a quick, not a rant, but like just something I wanted to talk about. I observed and clicked in my brain. There's a lot of conversation in the sneaker world and the sports brand world about, there's still value in signature sneakers. And like we talked about on the show before about how Nike's kind of moving away from focusing from a marketing standpoint on their US football efforts for a bunch of reasons. But I think one of them is clear. Like a huge part of these sports brands like Nike and Under Armour is selling shoes, right? And NFL people don't sell shoes because they wear cleats. And I think that that's never worked. Like even when I think the only people that I think about that have had that NFL players that have had shoes, Bo Jackson's were trainers. He didn't wear them on the field like as cleats. Randy Moss is one of the first Jordan brand athletes, but those shoes that he wore them in the game a couple times because like they played on turf, so he could wear sneakers. But they weren't like they weren't cool enough to wear. Like I think the most famous are probably Dion's Diamond Turfs, which again, like I think they played on turf so he could wear sneakers indoors, but and those are shoes that became like staples off the field. But nowadays, like I think if and except for basketball, it's hard to sell a signature sneaker. And talking about the NFL specifically, all of the big NFL guys wear basketball shoes that have their cleated versions. Like they're wearing player edition cleated versions of basketball shoes. So a lot of guys wear Jordans, but like specifically from what I noticed from the game yesterday, the Eagles game, Saquon's wearing LeBron 4s that came out in 2005 or 6, and their cleated version of LeBron 4s. Devontae Smith was wearing cleated version of Iverson's from like 2000 something. AJ Brown had on Kobe cleats, which I thought was also like very significant because yesterday was the anniversary when Kobe passed away. RIP Kobe. And then who's also Kobe's from Philly, which is a big deal. Like this connection there. I thought that was cool. But then Jalen Hurts has got who's a Jordan Brand athlete. He's got his own signature silhouette of a Jordan 3, which is one of the most popular silhouettes of Jordan. So like nobody's wearing like their own signature Nike cleat because like it just doesn't work. And I think it makes a lot of sense for Nike to figure out other ways to spend their time and energy, but the NFL in that space is not worth it. And it's clear by like all the different types of Jordan basketball or basketball sneakers that you see in cleated versions on the biggest stars in the NFL.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I had never put this together, but then this week I started seeing posts about it. I think it was specifically Saquon and the LeBron shoes. Um, but I think it's a really smart way for these companies who aren't selling cleats to sell more shoes of the like athletes they have signed. But then your point, like if they made uh Saquon sneakers, I feel like those would sell. Like if he collabed on designing something, you don't think that those would sell?
A
I mean, as
huge
long as they looked good.
reason why the signature sneakers work in basketball is because you see them in action, and it's like I mean, it's the whole concept of I want to be like Mike. I see the shoes and the mic is flying and the shoes,
I
but
just I could see it working with like specific people who are known for maybe their like sense of style. Like maybe like Devin Booker in the NBA. Like he's known off the court for his taste and his creativity. And I feel like that comes through in his shoes.
yeah, but
And so we picked like an NFL player, like Cam Newton, just as like the first person who came to mind, like when he was still playing, like had a sense of style. I don't know.
I mean,
He was
I
just not
think
liked enough. Is that what you're thinking?
no, no, I don't think you're. I think you might have a point, but the problem with Cam Newton is that he was Under Armour. Under Armour doesn't really like
Oh, right. Okay. I
hasn't
mean, fair, but
had a history of making great. I mean, other than the Currys and not even all the Currys, only some of the Currys are decent.
I
Um,
also don't think of Steph Curry as having like immaculate taste. So sorry, Steph. But
um, okay. Last thing, which is actual marketing. So, a trend that started a few years ago that we noticed and we wanted to talk about is everyone knows how big of a deal commercials are in the Super Bowl, but in the recent years, the brands have been either starting their spots earlier or teasing their spots in playoff games leading up to the Super Bowl. So like we definitely noticed a couple of those and want to talk about like a couple that we saw and then some other ones like that existed that we didn't see. So first of all, I didn't see this one live, but there was a Doritos one that had the Chiefs in it. So just, more sprinkle onto the fatigue there. Where it was literally asking them for their feedback on commercials, which is, I mean, it's definitely fueling the fatigue and fueling the scripted conspiracy because like you got these guys in the commercial for the Super Bowl and they haven't even gotten the Super Bowl yet, and now they're in the Super Bowl, but that's a whole nother conversation. Um, I also saw Bud Light had two of them, but I only saw one of them. It's one that had Shane Gillis and Post Malone in it, sitting in the driveway. And it's a cool interaction. Shane Gillis is talking about how you're not really allowed to drink the beer, and I knew this. I don't know when I realized this, but I maybe it was a TV thing or maybe it was a commercial thing where I knew that you can't like actually be on TV in a commercial or on TV drinking alcohol. Like it's got to be something else in it, or you can't do it.
mhm, mhm.
That's what their conversation is about, which I thought was cool because it kind of like Shane Gillis telling Post Malone that because Post Malone doesn't know that. And then we both saw the Taco Bell spot, which I thought was cool from the standpoint that they're teasing this idea that their commercial will have fans in it and not celebrities, but the concept of the commercial is Doja Cat is photobombing all these fans photos because she wants to be in it. So be interesting to see like I think that one definitely needs it to be some more special guests that will pop into the other spots for Taco Bell. I think Bud Light is probably like I think that's a good enough duo there. Shane Gillis has been everywhere. Post Malone's like having different editions or different versions of that duo together. I think it would be cool to see how they have a longer version of that in Super Bowl. So anything else that you saw that you thought was cool?
I was driving most of Sunday, so I unfortunately missed a lot of what happened in the football games and any of the ads that were teased. I did see the Taco Bell ad with Doja Cat. Um, I just think this is interesting. I think there's like a few things that like going on here. One is this year, like obviously Super Bowl ads get more and more expensive every year. A 30-second spot is $7 million, which when you actually think about that, like that's not a lot. Like $7 million of Doritos marketing budget is like nothing. Do you know what I mean? Um, but it's getting more expensive than ever, and there's like a wait list apparently this year. Like despite the high cost of ads, there's like companies that wanted ad time and didn't get it, and there's like a wait list for it. Um, and I think there's like this trend, and this is totally my theory, but of I think ads used to just be an opportunity to like make a more creative ad or like a funny ad and or Super Bowl ad specifically, where I think now it's an opportunity to like kick off a whole campaign.
Mm.
I feel like more of these like Super Bowl ads or the ones that come out before are like launching a fully kind of like separate campaign or a new campaign or a new partnership with a celebrity or whatever that goes on like beyond the Super Bowl. Um, I think it just is all tied to like maybe that spot in and of itself, like the ROI isn't there, this like 30-second Super Bowl spot, but if you like call attention to it before, kick it off at the Super Bowl when you have 123 million people watching, and then continue it after, like maybe it's just that much stronger of like an ad campaign. And it's just like the best way for these like primarily CPG companies to like launch their campaigns or like maybe the hottest time of year to do that. I don't know. This is fully like theoretical. I don't work in CPG brand advertising. So I don't know. Maybe someone can answer us. I actually know people who do work in CPG brand advertising, but that's like something that I think that like could be kind of behind this too.
I mean, I think the point is like the value is still there. And then, this is a way for them to be creative in how they maximize that value. I think that's a good point. Like, because people are going to have much more, you get a lot more earned media conversation about it, especially in social media age when you do it before. Like, that means that it's going to last for 2, maybe 3 weeks of
Yeah.
conversation about the spot or about whatever the promotion is.
Like better recall.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
I
think,
mean, if they say you have to, what is it? Like they say you have to see something 7 times to remember it
right.
in advertising, like that's like that guideline. Like the one Super Bowl ad's not going to do it. But if there's the pre-Super Bowl thing, the Super Bowl ad, and then you keep seeing a continuation of that campaign, like it'll maybe register more.
Right. And especially with, like I said, in the social media age, like those ads, we just watched them on YouTube, the ones that were on this past Saturday. I mean, Sunday. So, like, they exist outside of the life of 30-second spot that they were on, which gives even more time for people to interact it and see it and then get excited about whatever the big reveal is or whatever the actual spot is during the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I don't know. That'll be interesting. I don't know what I'm doing for the Super Bowl yet. So I'll have to like bring I'll have to make notes or something in my app, my notes app while I'm watching so we can report back. But
I mean, last year was big. I mean, we got a Beyonce announcement. We got Beyonce in a commercial that led to an album drop.
oh, she delayed her announcement on the 14th.
Yes.
And
Yes.
she announced it.
No, not that I've seen. So, hey, you never know, man.
I can't see her doing that again though, but
I mean, who knows? I just want the Eagles to win. That's it.
I
That's it.
really I really want to.
That's it. That's all I want. I just want the Eagles to win. I want it to be, I don't even care if it's a good game or not. I just want the Eagles to win. It's a good game if the Eagles win.
I mean, even outside not liking the Chiefs, I don't mind the Eagles winning. Like I kind of like the Eagles. Look at the line. It was like Chiefs Lions.
Yeah, I
Is
like
that
that.
possible? Yeah, Lions are NFC, right? I wouldn't care like at all. Like I don't care about the Lions,
The Lions
but I
had a
kind of like the Eagles, so I want them to win. What?
Lions had a good season. Like, I would have been okay with the Lions.
Wouldn't have been mad about it, but I just like don't have any feelings about them.
I think this is probably the matchup that the NFL wanted. It's a
No.
rematch. Yeah, it's a rematch.
Yeah, I mean the rematch. Okay, we didn't actually talk about that when it came to this matchup specifically. That adds a really interesting like narrative to this. That if they hadn't played 2 years ago, I feel like people would be less interested. But like as a sports fan, I'm definitely more interested in this because of the rematch. Um,
That was one of my points.
I think the people wanted, I know the people wanted Bills Commanders. That's what America wanted to see.
Why? Why would America want
Two
that?
underdogs. Not that the Bills are like really underdogs, but like they were so bad for so long, and like everyone loves the Bills Mafia, and then Commanders like came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I don't think that's. We'll see. That the rematch was one of my points about it. I forgot to say that. That's one of the reasons why I think it's going to be the biggest Super Bowl ever.
What, the rematch?
Rematch, Kendrick, Chiefs fatigue slash hate watch slash actual fans who want to see them win.
Slash Taylor Swift fans.
Slash Taylor Swift fans, yes. Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be big. I think it's gonna be big.
Yeah, I don't know. I
The
don't know.
Eagles just have like such a high powered like celebrity fan base too. Like the star power that was at their game yesterday is like crazy. Talking about like Kevin Hart
Fair.
and
Yeah.
you know
I was at
Bradley
an
Cooper.
Eagles. I was at an Eagles playoff game a couple of years ago, and I feel like everyone famous was there. Um, and that was just a playoff game, not like I don't even think it was a divisional game. Doesn't matter. Um, okay. I mean, you have a point. We'll see. I think that's all for this week.
Let me make sure to send you this Kendrick thing so you can. I know what it is. I don't know if you said that on this podcast, but for all of our watchers, like part of that has to do with the fact that Jules is a big J. Cole fan. But we're gonna leave. We're not gonna get into this anymore. This episode's over. But I'm just wanting to make sure that point of reference is given to people that watch this, so they can take all of your comments earlier about the Kendrick situation.
Put them into context. Okay. I think if we're adding that context, I'm not like salty on behalf of J. Cole. I think the more important context is that I am like a peace-loving person. I like people who use their platforms to spread messages of like therapy and like being a good person, not like Hall of Fame level hating. Like, if that's the context we're adding, I think that's the context that needs to be added. That's
So,
all I have to say.
J. Cole fan. There you go. Okay. All right, Jules.
All right, see you next week.
All right, talk